Senate in a special election. We don't quite know the date of it yet. Just waiting on the governor's announcement. But Natalie is running for Senate as a Libertarian. So, Natalie, why don't you introduce yourself and tell people who you are?
Hi, everybody. As he said, my name is Natalie Bruno. So I was born here in Oklahoma, but was a military brat. So I've moved all over the country, and then I've been back here in Oklahoma for about the last 18 years or so. Married, 6 kids and 3 dogs. I know that sounds crazy, but I only birthed 4 of them. 2 of them are bonus kids. Let's see. I mean, that's pretty much it, high level about me. And then obviously, I'm running for State District 22 here in Oklahoma.
That's great. That's great. So, so most people are like, the election's over. What do you mean is going on? So, Natalie, you are probably the next election in the country, other than maybe a runoff election. Like, right. You are probably the next chance for a Libertarian to be elected to office anywhere in the country right now. Mm-hmm. So, to everyone out here, what sort of things you mentioned? Taking care of our children and education as being top issues on your website, which is in the description for everyone here. Make sure you go check out Natalie's website and give her a donation, because quick, tight race, finances are going to be important for her. So why don't you tell us about your education platform and how it relates to Oklahoma?
Absolutely. Well, to keep it really high level, because I could be here for a million years. So Oklahoma, we have passed a lot of really great things over the past, probably about 19 years since I've been here. So I moved back here, I should say, in 2003. Right after that, we passed gaming. After that, we passed the lottery. Then we had class 3 gaming. Then we have medicinal cannabis that was passed. And with all of those, in addition to many other things, there's always been the promise of more funding for education. Unfortunately, Oklahoma has always been rated very, very low, not only in education, but also in teacher pay. And there has always been the promise of more money going to education, different bills, different tax increases that have been wrapped in those promises as, we're doing this so we can add more money to education. But if you really look over the last 20 years, it stayed really pretty level, with the exception of 2020. Because in 2019, we had a huge teacher walkout. And so they did increase the budget by, if I remember correctly, right around 190 million or so. But of course, that lasted for 1 year to make everybody happy. And we're already seeing a decrease of 2.5% on the budget for 2021. So part of it is going to definitely be unraveling some of the stipulations that we put on our education dollars here in the state, and then also auditing everything and figuring out where all this money is going, because it's definitely not going to education.
So basically what's happened is your politicians have said, we're doing this and we're taxing it for your education. We're doing this and we're taxing it for education. We're doing this and we're taxing it for education. But none of the money's actually going to education, is what it appears to be going on in the state. So I would say me and I think Libertarians most everywhere would say, if we're going to have the evil of taxation and funding government services, we should at least pay for the ones that we're saying we're paying for, would be really important to me. So what sort of things do you think might be detracting from the funding in education that you, or where do you suspect that there's the improper spending would be going on in your state?
Absolutely. So part of the problem is the fact that our industry in general is very reliant on oil and gas and the taxes associated with that. So when oil and gas goes down, obviously the taxes go down. And so instead of saying, like I do in my household, which is when we have less money, we redo our budget and make sure that the most important things get paid first, which should be our children. But that's not happening. We're still giving all the money to all the government entities that most of the time really don't need it. And we're cutting money back from education because it's easy. Instead of course, going against our cronies and our lobbyists to pull it from other areas. So that's where I am, believing that it's going. But obviously, I'm not going to come up here and pretend like I've run into every single little thing and know where every dollar is, because I don't. But that is one of the initiatives that I am going to make sure to do when I get there, is make sure that we audit and find out, where is this money? Where does it need to be pulled from, so that we can make sure that it is going in the most important places, which is our children. Because as you said, obviously the goal is to remove as much taxation as possible. But if we're going to do that, we're going to put it where we say we're going to put it. And then we're going to have the goal in mind to slowly, remove it, because it's unrealistic to think that we're just going to jump in there and remove all taxes, because that's not going to happen.
Absolutely. So someone in the chat right here just brought up and said, Alejandro says, Oklahoma has too many private prisons. I know you've brought up criminal justice reform on your platform. What sort of things do you think we can do in Oklahoma and private prisons, any prisons in general? Do we have too many of them in Oklahoma? And what can we do about it?
So we have too many prisons in general. So Oklahoma has one of the highest incarceration rates. It's actually, well, in 2019, it was second in highest incarceration rate per capita. And it's also number one in incarcerating women. Another thing that I found interesting as well that I just recently found is we actually sentence nonviolent crimes 80 to 100% more than any other state. So simple, drug charges or possession charges. We have people in prison right now that are spending 20 plus years in prison for, drug possession. And then we have rapists and, assault and battery, on the streets after 5-10 years. I mean, it's a really broken system here in Oklahoma. And that's, if I were to say like my number one initiative, that's definitely part of it.
Okay. Another thing that you talk about, and I think it's always important, every state has their own Veterans Affairs system. Different hospitals, different, depending on where you live, you're going to get a different type of one-size-fits-all care. What sort of things can you do for the veterans in your communities?
So part of the thing is, and I've had a couple people ask that, what are you in your position going to do to help? So a couple of different things. One, any, bill or any policy that makes it across my desk that I do have influence over, I'm going to make sure that we're making the very best choices for our veterans. As I stated earlier, my dad, he was in the military for 33 years. He was as high as you could get as an NCO. My brother was an officer. My grandfather was in the Navy. So if anybody is very pro taking care of our veterans, it's myself. I actually had a cousin that passed away due to suicide. He was one of the 22. And so in that regard, making sure to focus on them, but also whenever you have, that status of state senator, you end up having a lot more clout to help people focus on a lot more issues. And so making sure that our VA system and our healthcare and stuff like that is as best as it can get for Oklahoma, because just like with anything else, we're by no means in the top half of the states, and we have a lot of work to be done.
So you kind of brought healthcare back into it there, and we were just talking about the incarceration rate in Oklahoma. And so nonviolent drug offenders being arrested and put in prison, most likely they're probably not getting sober in prison because they have access to everything that's available to them on the street, if not in more concentrated availability. Right. What sort of things can we do from a healthcare perspective to help the opioid epidemic and everything else that we have going on, and maybe can lower that incarceration rate through healthcare services?
Well, I definitely feel like we put too much focus on medicating people and not enough focus on mental health. With anybody, I want to say anybody, with nearly everybody that has a drug problem, there's usually an underlying mental health problem. And they're self-medicating. It is too hard for people to be able to see a counselor, see a therapist. A free market healthcare system will make it a lot easier for people to be able to afford to be able to go see somebody for if they have depression or if they have other underlying issues. But we make it too difficult for people to be able to get help, and we put too much of a stigma on people to get help as well. So if obviously our goal is to remove as much, taxation and stuff as possible, but if we were to remove all of the people that we have in the prisons for drug offenses, for example, and all of the tax dollars that are going towards those people, and the tax dollars that even are associated with that. So how many families are left without parents? And so then now they're on government, systems because they don't have a 2-parent income. I mean, it's kind of like a butterfly effect. If we were to shift even half of those dollars towards more, mental health and mental health reform, we would see a drastic decrease in the need to put people in prison. We would be able to, spend less tax dollars on government like welfare and stuff like that. I mean, and it would again be like a domino effect or a butterfly effect where everything else would kind of fall into place. Okay,
so let's kind of shift gears. Let's talk about the race here a little bit. You've got we're anticipating the governor will probably announce the special election will be held in February at some point in time. What do you have? Obviously, there's no incumbent now, so there's other competitors in the race. I'm sure they're getting a lot of funding already.
Yes.
What sort of things do you need to help make your campaign a success in the next 3 months?
Okay, so that's a great question. Thank you. So obviously, all of the donation dollars that we can possibly get, just because this is a short turnaround. We don't have a long period of time to be able to reach out to donors. I know on my end, I'm getting involved as much as possible. One thing I haven't mentioned that I do feel like is a benefit is the fact that I am very involved in the community. I was a CASA volunteer in another county for quite a while. I am a soccer and a basketball coach for the YMCA here in our district, and I have done that for several years. I've been very involved with the school. I'm on the associate board for Oklahoma Lawyers for Children, so I've made sure to put my name out there and gotten that earned media as best as I can. And then luckily also with my normal Monday through Friday job, I know a lot of people in the community as well. So I can't reach everybody without those extra funding and those extra dollars. So funding is going to be huge. Thankfully, I have a great support system here with our state LP. They're helping me as much as they can to have the volunteers and stuff necessary. I even have people. So some of you may not realize this, or you do. I was actually on Joe Jorgensen's national campaign team. And so there's quite a few people from the national campaign that are actually helping me as well. So I've got a really great system behind me and a great group of people that are focused on helping me win this position.
Okay, that's great. So what sort of strategies do you think are going to be most effective for winning this race? Are you going to be going out? Are you going to be knocking doors, mailers, social media, word of mouth? What sort of things do you think are your best paths through your campaign? Because I myself and any other person who's thinking about running, we're all curious what strategies you're finding are reaching people the best.
Absolutely. So obviously, as libertarians, we're at a little bit of a disadvantage because, especially here, this is a very red state, and so people very naturally want to vote for a Republican. So a lot of it's going to be getting out and knocking on doors and meeting people. So obviously, with 3-month period, I'm very grateful that I have access to data analytics people. But I will tell you, I'll drop his name, Dr. Dave Schrader out of California. He is phenomenal at pulling research for people, even in other states. He's helping me to know where to get the most bang for my buck when it comes to neighborhoods and stuff like that. But I plan on knocking on as many doors as possible. I plan on doing direct mail pieces just because the fact that it's the easiest way to get everywhere. It's just getting in front of as many people as possible. I say shaking hands, bumping elbows. It is COVID, or waving from the door frame, but meeting out as many people as you can in this, quick amount of time as you can, because people want to vote for somebody that they like. People want to vote for somebody that they feel that stands for something. And you can't just, put up a billboard and cross your fingers and hope enough people see your name. You have to put out the work to do it. So.
Absolutely. And just letting people know that they have an option out there. I think a big thing that all of us libertarians have to remember is we're campaigning. We're usually held to a higher standard just because people are skeptical of us. They're like, well, why aren't you a Republican or Democrat? What might be wrong with you that you're not one of them or something,
I have been asked that for sure.
So, I think I even saw it today. Spike Cohen posted, a very factual statement, and someone's like, well, you're going to have to provide some sources for that. And it's like, well, I don't see you asking, Kamala Harris for sources when she makes a statement. So, and it trickles down even all the way down into our local races. So I think as long as we all recognize that we are not only, a candidate, but you're an ambassador when you're out talking to people, because you're educating them on what we believe. So I think that's important for us all to remember.
Absolutely. And one thing too that I would point out as well is just from my experience with libertarians in general, is we do a really great job about saying, hey, we shouldn't do this or we should do this, but we don't follow up with the benefits of doing it that way. So I know that with my race in particular, that's one thing that I plan on focusing on, because I know that for someone who's not a libertarian, explain the benefit like, oh, well, when you explain it, that makes sense. So, make sure to not just make a statement, explain how that statement benefits everyone.
Okay, I'm not sure. I apologize. It looked like my internet just kind of started crashing here. My
Oh, no.
connection went right down, so I apologize if anyone did lose part of that. Do you want to kind of repeat that, because I know I lost some of the audio and people may be wondering exactly what you said there.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. So what I had mentioned was one thing that we as libertarians need to do better about is explaining the benefits of some of our ideologies. So instead of just saying, we want to do away with the Department of Education, for example, we need to explain how that benefits us by doing away with the Department of Education. So that way, people who don't know our ideologies, they don't hear it and be like, oh my gosh, these people are crazy. We give them the opportunity to learn something, because it's all about educating them on why our policies are great policies.
All right, absolutely. Well, Natalie, I try and like to keep these short because we'll be honest, most people don't watch 20 minutes of a video on Facebook.
I'm glad to see that there's 18 people on here still. Thank you, guys.
Yes. So as long as we get the important information up there up front, I think Facebook will push it out there for us. So thank you everyone for joining. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, retweet wherever you're watching this: Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Subscribe if you haven't. Thank you, everyone. Have a